Today, there are countless programs, tools, plugins, add-ons, and courses all competing for our attention as 3D artists. And while some of them absolutely deserve our time and attention and money, others can prove to be more of a distraction. So as I was sitting here watching my inbox fill up this morning with Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales, I figured as someone who has dedicated this entire YouTube channel and my newsletter simply to discovering and testing and figuring out which of these are actually worth your time, that maybe this was the perfect opportunity to put together my own top 10 list of the tools, assets, and resources that can help you create bigger and better worlds much faster that also might happen to have a huge discount right now. But of course, if you're catching this video after Black Friday has ended, I'd still urge you to stick around because some of these sales do extend through the new year, and one of them near the end is even free. And I also want to make it clear up front that none of these are affiliated or sponsored in any way. They're just what I have been using and testing and would absolutely purchase again myself, even at full price, because of the insane amount of time and effort they have saved me while creating my own projects. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it. The first on my list is Dash by Polygonflow, and for those of you who have been subscribed to the channel for a while, I'm sure this comes as no surprise. But for those of you who are new to the channel, Dash is a plugin for Unreal Engine that makes world building both easier and more controllable, and I think that is what makes Dash special, is that it can somehow do both of these things at the same time, where most tools usually sacrifice one for the other. For example, when it comes to making things easier, many of its procedural world building tools like scattering objects or creating roads or generating vines or generating cables and using physics to paint and place objects makes building your scenes so much more artist friendly, since you don't need to dive deep into the complex, highly technical systems inside of Unreal that these features are built on top of. But at the same time, while some tools that aim to make things easier accomplish that by taking away your control, Dash has struck a great balance where you can still dial in very specific looks and placement with each of its settings, and it all just feels incredibly intuitive as a 3D artist. And right now, Dash is offering a Black Friday sale of 30% off on all of its perpetual plans. So if you plan to spend a lot of time in Unreal Engine and you want to win back countless hours on your projects while making them look much better and having more fun working inside them, then this is a great time to grab that deal. But also, if you're catching this after the sale closes, they do offer a free trial, and it's only $10 to get started for the first few months, so you can test it out to see if it makes sense for you before committing. They've also just released last week a full demo scene where you can test and play with all of its features very easily all in one place without having to go look for random examples or context to test it inside of. And they also released a dedicated video showing you this over on their channel, which I'd highly recommend, and I'll link in the description. Second on the list is Marmoset Toolbag 5. Now, for those of you who work in game dev and game art, Marmoset needs no introduction, as it is generally considered one of the best ways to bake your assets before texturing, though many artists also use it to showcase their models and textures as well. But the reason that I wanted to bring Marmoset 5 so high up in this list is because there are three things happening right now that are worth calling out. The first is that it has a 20% off sale on all of its licenses. Whether you're subscribing monthly or yearly or grabbing a perpetual license, you can get 20% off on all of those. The second reason is for those of you who may be interested in the idea of a perpetual license specifically. Maybe you have a monthly subscription right now, or you've just dealt with baking in Substance instead because you didn't want another monthly subscription. Either way, this might be the best time to consider upgrading to that perpetual license with Marmoset 5, given that it's still very early in its major version release cycle. See, contrary to how many perpetual licenses work, Marmoset doesn't limit your upgrades to just a year. They limit them by major release version. For example, I think I purchased Marmoset 4 sometime back in 2022, and I still received updates on it all the way up until 5.0 that just dropped late last year. So if you are considering it, hopping in now gives you the most value out of that perpetual purchase versus taking a monthly subscription over the next few years. The third reason is for those of you who, like me, had a Marmoset 4 license, but were maybe on the fence about upgrading or when would be a good time to do that. Because fortunately, Marmoset has, for whatever reason, given us the ability to stack our upgrade discount with this Black Friday discount, which means that on top of the Black Friday 20%, we can also take an additional 30% off if we're upgrading from a version 4 license. It took me a second to figure out how this works, but if you had a V4 license, then somewhere in your inbox from last October, you should have a personalized discount code that you can use at checkout that will stack on top of the Black Friday discount. It is important to note that even if you miss the Black Friday sale that ends December 1st, you still have until December 31st to use that upgrade discount of 30%. But once that passes, it's gone forever. So don't miss out on one or both of these. The third item on this list is really a duo, and it's that premium asset packs are more accessible than ever right now. There are, of course, countless platforms and marketplaces for sourcing 3D assets, and they all range in prices and often run sales, including right now for Black Friday. But right now, especially given that it's Black Friday, I think it's a good opportunity to consider picking up more of a premium kit from a higher end creator because of the steep discounts that end up making the biggest difference here, given the higher entry point for them. Now, I know that many of us pride ourselves on mostly using what we create ourselves, but I've personally found it incredibly helpful to pull apart and really get an in-depth look at how some of these premium kits and their assets are put together by top artists working in the industry. There really is just a huge difference between a passable, affordable kit bash asset floating around online and these higher end kits that artists who work at the upper end of our industries right now are able to create if given the time. So if you're just getting started in your 3D journey, really, I could not recommend this as a purchase any higher right now. But yeah, with that said, before I show you my favorite place to pick these up, the first one that I want to mention is the one we're probably all aware of, which is Kitbash 3D. And there are a couple of nuances that I want to call out here. If you haven't looked at Kitbash 3D recently, they currently offer one huge premium unlimited subscription that runs you $1,000 a year, and it gives you access to every kit and every asset in addition to some special ones only available behind that large subscription. But for most of us, this is very much out of reach at $1,000, though it is discounted right now by 40%, which brings it down to $600, meaning it averages out to around $50 a month. However, they're also offering 40% off for individual kits this year as well, despite them pushing you toward that big subscription. So if you've never used their assets before, and that $600 price point is just out of the question right now, you might want to check out their individual kits. For example, this Cyberpunk one that I have right here. Now, one thing I want to call out here, because it is a bit confusing, is that you'll notice that when you're on their site looking at the kit overview, that everyone is marked as on sale. But when you click into an individual kit, it is just listed at a base price of $145. And even when you click into and add it to your cart and go through the checkout flow, there's no discount code applied. I have flagged this to their team as a bit confusing, and I'm not sure if this is intentional or not, but until they update that, just know that the $145 price tag is the discounted price. These kits are normally around $250, which you can see over on Fab, where they currently aren't on sale. So yeah, just know that the prices you're seeing here are the sale despite not having a clear discount applied to them. Okay, so the second part of this one is my favorite place to get premium assets, which is big, medium, small. And they are slightly less known, though they're really starting to make a name for themselves. And they work with some incredible artists, and they're really spending a lot of time and attention building out each kit, with artists really at the top of their game in whichever area they're creating a collection for. And all of these kits are available with a 40% discount right now for Black Friday. I personally had the Tokyo Back Alleys, Greebles, and the Astronova collection previously, and just now I have picked up the newer Cyberpunk collection during this sale. And having spent some time with each of these, I highly recommend all of them, whether you want to just use them as they were intended as kit bash assets, or if you're like me and you just want to use them as incredibly high quality reference as you're learning 3D. Either way, check it out and make sure to grab one of them while they're on sale. Moving on to number 4 is William Faucher's EasySuite of tools available on the Fab Marketplace. In case you missed it, I recently did a video on his latest tool called Easy Toolbag that I'll throw a link up for now, but his entire suite of easy tools, including Easy Mapper, Easy Atmos, Easy Fog, Easy Rain, Easy Snow, and of course, Easy Toolbag are all available on a 30% sale. These tools do lean more film and VFX versus game dev since that is his focus and background, but I personally still use these all of the time when I'm working on personal projects or I'm just working more on the render and presentation side of things. I just want to get all of these things into my scene and make them look good really quickly and easily. So if you've been considering picking these up, now would be the time to do so with that 30% discount. Staying on the Unreal Engine thread for a second, number 5 is Ultra Dynamic Sky, which is one of the best premium plugins available for Unreal. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically a complete sky and weather system that gives you way more control over lighting and clouds and time of day and atmospheric effects than what you get out of the box with Unreal, and it's incredibly artist friendly. It traditionally costs $50, which is a steal in my opinion for everything that it offers. But the creator has offered up a 50% discount for Black Friday that runs through the weekend. So if you've had this one on your wish list or you've been wanting to take your environment and lighting to the next level, then make sure to check this out while you can get that sale. Number 6 is a quick one and maybe a more under the radar pick, but it's actually 2 plugins which are called Electronic Nodes and Darker Nodes, and they're both available for Unreal Engine. The first of these with Electronic Nodes changes the shape of your wires in Blueprints, Materials, and Niagara to be straight with 45-degree or 90-degree angle options instead of the default smooth curves. So instead of all of that spaghetti across your graph, you instead get something that looks a lot more like a circuit board, and it makes it so much easier to actually follow what's going on when you have a complex graph. Darker Nodes is from the same developer, and it essentially gives you a more modern theme for the Unreal editor. You can choose from a number of preset color combinations, and it has small design improvements to blueprints and updates to things like fonts that just make everything look a little bit nicer. Of course, these are both more on the quality of life side of things, so not absolutely essential. But if you're planning to spend more time in the node editors inside of Unreal this coming year like I do, then you might want to grab one or both of these. They are already very reasonably priced, but they do have a nice 30% off discount through Cyber Monday. So if they seem interesting and you don't want to spend too much on just quality of life things, this might be the timing to do that. Number 7 is the duo of HardOps and Boxcutter, which are the 2 add-ons most responsible for me switching from Maya over to Blender. Now there is some merit to learning vanilla Blender without any add-ons at all, which I've since been exploring more recently. But as a 3D art student who had been trained in Maya, I found it hard to get used to the Blender way of doing things at first, because I just couldn't fully see the upside of how much faster it could be once I fully bought into it as my default program. But after some weeks and tutorials bouncing around trying to do just that, I finally stumbled on a Blender Bros tutorial that used both HardOps and Boxcutter, and those two alongside machine tools, that combo completely changed my mind. Within 1 or maybe 2 weeks, I was already modeling faster in Blender than I was in Maya, which I had been using for almost 2 years at that point. For those unfamiliar, HardOps and Boxcutter are really companion add-ons for Blender that are designed to speed up modeling by automating a lot of the common tasks that let you just work directly in the viewport. The first of these with HardOps focuses on the broader workflow with a range of tools and features for modifiers and bevels and mirroring and shading and even rendering, so you can build and refine complex models with much less slow manual setup and clicking. Boxcutter, on the other hand, specializes in fast visual Boolean cutting that lets you draw shapes on screen right in your viewport to cut and slice and inset or add forms non-destructively. For me specifically, that meant I could block out the panels and the vents and all of the sci-fi details extremely quickly in a way that was simply impossible or unintuitive in Maya. So when these two were used together, especially alongside the basically free Machine Tools add-on, this collection of tools created a native feeling, non-destructive toolkit inside of Blender that made it essentially impossible for me to consider working in Maya again. You can grab these add-ons individually or as a combo over on Superhive with a 30% Black Friday sale running right now. So this is a great time to grab those if you've been considering upgrading your Blender workflow. Number 8 brings us to everyone's favorite part of 3D art, which is UVs and retopology. Personally, I've been using the ZenUV add-on for Blender for years because it speeds up the entire UV workflow. But since ZenUV doesn't have a Black Friday sale running right now, I want to highlight a tool that I've been meaning to try for a long time, which I believe is pronounced RizomUV. It's been getting a lot of attention the last few years, but the full price has always made me hesitate, which I think is a bit funny in hindsight because as 3D artists will often buy the fun world building tools that focus on the more enjoyable part of the process without even blinking, but we avoid investing in the unglamorous stuff that would actually save us time every single day in a way that could actually help us get back to the part we want to spend our time on. And I think RizomUV might be one of those tools. Now, for anyone unfamiliar, RizomUV is a dedicated UV mapping application built purely for speed, precision, and packing efficiency, as they say. And it's not a Blender add-on like ZenUV. It is its own specialized environment built just solely for getting the best UVs as quickly as possible. According to their site and all of the reviews I've seen, it has extremely fast auto unwrapping and smart scene placement tools that minimize distortion, and industry-leading packing algorithms and real-time visualization of distortion and pixel density, and rock solid support for UDIM workflows. And if it can indeed take that most mechanical, boring part of the 3D process that we all dread and make it genuinely faster and easier to get in and out of, then I think it is probably well worth it even at its full price. But right now they are running a 30% off Black Friday sale until December 7th, which probably means this is going to make it out of my wish list and into my shopping cart and hopefully into my workflow at some point this weekend. Lastly, in this section, I wanted to also shout out the Retopoflow 4 add-on for Blender, because if there's one thing that I genuinely missed from Maya when I moved over to Blender was how natural the retopology process felt there. Retopoflow has been on my radar for quite a while since I think the version 3 release, because it promises to bring that same fluidity into Blender with tools built specifically for drawing clean topology directly onto a high poly sculpts, which you can see examples of here on the listing, that somehow makes the retopo process looks satisfying, which is something I never thought that I would say. Now, I didn't personally pick it up in version 3, but it has released a version 4, which has completely reworked everything inside of it. And according to its reviews, the responsiveness in version 4 is noticeably better than older releases. For example, working on dense sculpts is smoother and your actions register quickly and snapping behaves more predictably, and the viewport doesn't stutter or crash out with that heavier geometry. And they're also running a 25% off Black Friday discount over on Superhive right now. So if you've been curious about it, this is probably the most painless moment to upgrade your least favorite part of your 3D art pipeline. Number 9 brings us to the education and courses that I personally recommend. I think it's obvious that some of the bigger learning platforms have Black Friday sales, but I wanted to call out some of my peers and fellow YouTubers instead who offer their own programs and courses. But real quick before I do, I just want to take a moment to express that I know that it's easy to clown on paid courses from YouTubers. But frankly, in my own journey, I would not have made it through 3D art school, or maybe even started 3D at all, or been able to make it to where I am right now, having been lucky enough to pick up some staff picks over on the rookies, or even having had Adobe share my projects on their profiles. None of that would have happened without both the free help of these YouTubers with their weekly and monthly content, but also because of their paid courses when I was ready to go deeper. And truthfully, now that I'm on the other side creating content on YouTube myself, I fully appreciate that all of their free content would not be possible at all for them to create if they weren't able to earn a living from that premium stuff when their audience is looking to go deeper. So I just wanted to shout that out before we got into the actual courses to set hopefully the right tone for this. So yeah, with that said, I just wanted to shout out a few that I learned a lot from in my own journey who are all running Black Friday sales right now. First is Blender Bros, which I mentioned before, that got me into hard surface modeling in Blender versus using Maya. And they have a huge range of programs, but the ones that I have personally taken are the Ultimate Guide to Hard Ops and Boxcutter, Hard Surface Game Assets 2.0, and the Sci-Fi Generator Design. And all of those, including their other courses, are available right now for 50% off. So I highly recommend checking those out. The second is CGCookie, who has countless tutorials here on YouTube on all of Blender's basics and has been a great resource for me as I try to balance out the add-on forward approach of Blender Bros with more of the vanilla Blender approach that CGCookie uses in their tutorials. And they're also running a 30% off sale on all of their premium courses over on their site. The next is Unreal Sensei, who I'm sure we're all familiar with, and he has a 50% off Black Friday sale going on right now on his premium programs, including his masterclass. But that one's super limited time-wise, so if you want to check it out, I would recommend doing that as soon as you see this video. The next one is a bit newer, but I have to shout out the guys over at Bad Decision Studios who are running a huge discount on their Unreal Engine courses. Now, their approach does focus more on VFX and filmmaking, so that's something to be aware of if you're like me and mostly interested in game dev. But these guys are quickly becoming my favorite podcast in this space, since they bring such a positive, upbeat energy to everything they do, which I think is a very welcome breath of fresh air in the creative space right now. So if you've been struggling to learn Unreal Engine more in depth, I would recommend checking them and this sale out, because they might get you over that line purely with their energy alone. And with that, we come to our 10th and final point on this list, which I really struggled to pick. And it being the last one put a lot of pressure on it, while I also knew that most viewers will have left at this point based on YouTube averages. But in the end, what I decided is to reserve this last spot for something that I've created and that you can access completely for free, which is the 3D art curriculum. And this is something that I created just after coming out of 3D art school, which is something that I spent around 2 years and almost $25,000 on. And I do have an older complete video dedicated to explaining that experience and what it is. But essentially, I took everything I learned throughout my education and I created a curriculum out of it, but instead of filling it with content that I created from scratch myself, which would very easily get outdated as they so often do, I instead pulled together mostly free but also premium courses and content from all around the web from the best creators, and I assembled a deliberate learning path that mirrors the best way to learn 3D art faster, more efficiently, and most importantly, more economically than pretty much anything out there. And it's exactly what I would want if I had the chance to start over as a resource for getting to where I am much faster and with much less cost. And truthfully, I likely would have still attended 3D art school, but I think that I would have gone through this curriculum first, so that I would have gotten much more out of that paid program with a much deeper understanding of how everything generally works going in. Now, at this point, I've had thousands of students go through the 1.0 version of the curriculum already, but admittedly, I did let it fall a bit out of date over the past year while I was focusing on other things. So I'm in the process of upgrading the entire thing to a 2.0 version behind the scenes. So if you're wanting to hop on board when that version 2.0 rolls out, then you can join the waitlist and you'll get completely free access when it goes live. If you're interested, you can grab that link to the 3D art curriculum down in the description below, along with direct links to everything that I mentioned in this video. And again, none of these are sponsored and I don't get any affiliates or commissions or kickbacks from recommending them. It's just what I use or would use in my own projects. If you did enjoy this video, then the best way you can help me out is to drop a comment down below. Let me know which is your favorite, or if I missed a great tool or one that's on sale right now. I would love to hear that as well. And thank you for being here, and I'll catch you in the next one.